This is the town hall that we're doing for wards 1 and 3. So essentially north end of the city, and appropriately we're doing it in North Medford Gym. Thanks to everyone for coming out here tonight. I know we've got a lot of good stuff that we want to get to. So a little bit about how this is going to work. We're going to go ahead and kick it off with just getting everybody introduced here on the panel. I swear it's on. All right, I'll hold it a little closer. Perfect. So we're going to kick it off with, I think actually it was the background noise, ma'am. It wasn't me. I was doing it perfect. We're going to kick it off with some introductions from everybody. Then we're going to have essentially a couple of key points of topics to be presented by staff, and then we'll take your questions. So to make this work the best and to ensure that everybody's concerns can get heard as much as we can, just let's all follow some decorum. Let's all allow people to speak. And even at the end, if you didn't get your question, I'm sure people will stick around to help answer whatever question you might still have. I feel like starting right down here with Parks and Recreation.
Thank you very much. Hey, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Rich Rosenthal. I'm the Parks and Recreation Facilities Director in my 10th year as Director, 19th with the city.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Thompson. I'm your fire chief, and I've been serving in that position for 6.5 years.
Mike Kurlinger, Ward 1 Counselor. I have the long tenure of about 14 months now.
That means I'm the senior Ward 1 counselor, Jessica Ayers, also sitting council president.
I'm Garrett West, representing Northwest Medford, so they're representing Northeast. Kevin and I are Northwest, and I have also been here for about 14 months.
Close to 14 years, actually. My name is Kevin Stein. I'm a Ward 3 City Councilor. I live off Ross in West Medford. I've been on the council. This is my 12th year. So every other council member is in their first term, and then I'm in my third. So I just really enjoy this stuff, and I look forward to answering questions as we move forward. Thank you.
And Kevin never reminds us that he's the senior city councilman. I'm John Weil. I'm serving as the interim city manager. I retired as the public works director last summer, and the mayor asked me to come back and serve as an interim role, and I've been here for 4 months until we get a full-time city manager to replace me.
Hi, I'm Dan Worth. I'm the Public Works Director, and John made it sound like he's only been here 4 months. He's been here a lot longer. I'm the junior guy up here. I've only been here 9 months. I'm also a resident of Ward 1 and look forward to talking with you.
I'm Eric Mitten, City Attorney, Go Black Tornadoes. I've worked for the city for 10 years.
I'm going to stand because I'm short. I'm Justin Ivins. I'm your police chief. I've worked for the city for over 30 years. I've been your chief for the last 4.5 years. I've been raised in this community. Medford is all I know. I don't know anything different. So I truly love this community. Both my kids attended North here and graduated from here. And so for you guys, I just want you to know that livability issues, neighborhood concerns are a high priority of mine and always have been. Thanks for coming.
Well, Chief, we're going to kick off with public safety and neighborhood concerns. We're going to hear from both police chief and our fire chief on this, but since the microphone's here, why don't you go ahead and kick it off?
Well, just to add to that just a little bit, several years ago, the fire chief and I recognized that the city of Medford we were going to continue to grow in population. And city manager at the time, Brian Shotun, had the foresight along with us to create a strategic plan for a 10-year period of time, which allowed us to add additional bodies that were needed to fulfill our staffing levels. So over the last 5 years, we're into the 5th year of this, we've created 13 positions. 10 of those are patrol officers, and 3 of those are assigned to our livability team. Coming out of COVID in 2020, I think a lot of you, if you've been here very long, recognize the issues that we dealt with homelessness, the issues that were going on in our parks, And through some just amazing work through our city attorney's office, our parks department, we've got a handle on that. We do twice a year, we do an encampment survey. We just completed that in March of this year. There were 13 established camps throughout the city of Medford, and that's both on private and public property. That number was well into the hundreds not too long ago. And so the livability team, I look at now as one of those teams going back, like when I first started, drug teams were the big thing. We all know we have drug problems, so we created drug teams. We had gang problems, so we started gang problems. We now face livability issues that people are concerned of, and I think the livability team is something that's going to be here for a long, long time. And we need to keep our foot on the gas. We need to keep doing that work that we're doing because we don't want to revert back to the issues that we were facing not too long ago. So overall, we're doing great. Love the community support and the work that our folks are doing.
Thank you, Chief. I think one thing I'll just tag on to that as far as it goes is the availability of the police department to the community. We've been doing some deep dives into data regarding homelessness, crime, and also just overall livability issues. And if we analyze data from our livability team, what we find is of the calls we get, particularly suspicious behavior. So people will see something that, kind of the see something, say something kind of philosophy. And of those calls, only 5% actually turn into actionable items. And so what I would say, what that really reflects is, number one, a pure commitment by this police force that the theory is, or the saying is, no call too small. This police department responds when called. And that also, there's a basic indicator of public trust in law enforcement in this community, and that's a little bit rare in this country right now, so great job, Chief. Mr. Thompson, Chief Thompson, sorry.
Good evening, everybody. Eric Thompson again, Fire Chief. As Chief Ivan, can you hear me now? All right, thank you, sorry. As Chief Ivan said, the strategic plan was huge for our organization as far as advancing our services, expanding public safety for fire, rescue, and EMS. And one of the most things that I'm proud about to be able to share is our EMS squads and the innovation that the EMS squads were able to bring to our deployment model. Traditionally, we send the big red fire truck to everything. And so now we're utilizing single row paramedics and EMTs riding in Tahoes to help us cover the EMS calls. EMS is one of the larger incident types that we respond to. So naturally, it's just good business practices to use smaller vehicles that are easier to move around. It's better for the roadway infrastructure. It's safer for the community. It's safer for the responders. Access has been improved by using those EMS squads. And our EMS squads are now taking about 28% of our overall call volume off of the engine crews. And so why that matters is because now your fire engines and your ladder companies, they're more readily available for fire incidents. And that's really important in the summertime. And through that strategic plan, we were also able to expand firefighters. And so your fire companies have 4 people on them. And that is really optimal staffing levels for the fire side. And again, in the summertime, that allows us to cover both engines and brush responses. So we're very proud of that model that was facilitated through the adoption of the strat plan. Also, some exciting news right down the street. You'll notice a little construction project. That's Fire Station 15. We hope that by midsummer, end of June, maybe second week of July, our firefighters are actually going to be able to start operating out of that new station. And so that new station, the previous building, that was a 50-year-old building. And so it did its time. It served the community very well. But now with the new station, we're able to expand our service. And I just spoke of the EMS squads. We're going to place an EMS squad in that station. So this district, this area, is one of our highest EMS volumes in the city. And so now we'll have additional coverage to be able to respond on those EMS incidents. When we talk about preparedness and being prepared for wildland, very proud, Aaron Ott, our emergency manager, he is a grant extraordinaire. He's awesome at securing grants. We're very proud that we have received $4.5 million in FEMA grant funds to help with fuel reduction and fire and wildfire mitigation efforts. So with those $4.5 million funds, thank you, we're going to be able to do some great work along our greenway, in our Prescott Park, and other parts of the city to do thin the brush, clean it up, take some of the dead brush and trees down, and really reduce our fire risk in those areas. So we greatly appreciate all the support that the community provides to our firefighters and the department, and thank you very much for being here tonight. Thank you.
So with that said, we also want to hear from Parks Department, and it's kind of interesting. There is certainly a lot of livability when it comes to parks. And we kind of have struggled, and we've kind of seen this with the visible encampments, for example, from homelessness, and the impact on how people feel in the parks. And what we're starting to see is us turn a little bit of a corner on that. So maybe, Rich, you can touch on that as well.
Thank you, Your Honor. Rich Rosenthal, your Parks and Recreation Director, and it's my honor to oversee a department that manages 32 public parks and over 2,600 acres of public land. Prescott Park is 1,800 acres, so that sort of skews the numbers, but we're very fortunate to have an asset of that type and size in our community. We have seen a huge improvement in terms of park maintenance in the reduction of trash and the reduction of illegal activities in our park system over the past 2 or 3 years, thanks to our partners in police and the livability team, and the huge improvement. And it makes my life easier because our park maintenance people are happier. So that is a positive. I wanted to tell you about two things. One, new development and renovations, which I get the most excited about. In the booklet that you may have, new development. The city is in the process of partnering with Howard Memorial Sports Park Incorporated and developing the 50-acre park that is around the Rogex in West Medford. So in about a month, who here plays pickleball? Okay, who knows someone who plays pickleball? Okay, so those people are going to be very excited in about a month when a 19-court dedicated pickleball outdoor facility opens. And all the orthopedic surgeons are going to be thrilled. Brian Showtune thank you for feeding me that one before the meeting. So in about a month, there'll be a dedicated pickleball facility, which is what we heard in the Parks and Recreation Strategic Plan, what residents really wanted more of. So we will deliver on that. There are 4 sand volleyball courts that will open in the next couple of months at that location. And on Memorial Day, the Vietnam Memorial Wall replica, it's a 75% of the size of the Washington, D.C. wall, will be unveiled, ribbon cutting on Memorial Day, Monday, May 25th at 1:30. So that's exciting. And then around the wall in the northeast part of that park is a neighborhood park that will serve that West Medford community that does not have a playground within a half mile of those residences. So that's the new development. What I get excited about is taking existing facilities and upgrading them to a modern standard. And that is what we will be doing at Jackson Park in West Medford, adjacent to the Santo Community Center. And that park was built in the 1960s and 70s, and you might recall that's where one of the city's 2 outdoor seasonal swimming pools operated from 1960 until 2023 before the Rogex opened. So we're in the process of investing city funds along with state funds, state grants for a $2.3 million renovation of Jackson Park, which is long in the tooth and is going to go from one of our oldest parks, probably the most tired right now, to really vibrant with a new aquatics splash pad on the east side and other amenities in that park. Other renovations, Harry and David Field, we've replaced the surface there. The Harry and David Field is at Lithium Driveway Fields. That's where the Medford Rogues play. That's where the Medford Mustangs play in the summer, and that is the home field for South Medford High School. So that field was replaced with Bermuda grass. So most of our yards have ryegrass. Ryegrass struggles in the summer, and it gets a little warm around here. It takes a lot of water, and it does not like being cut short. Baseball players like having the grass cut about 1, maybe 1.5 inches. So ryegrass struggles. So that's why in August, if you go on the Rogues games, why the outfield looks a little, struggled a little bit, and plus irrigation issues. Bermuda grass loves the heat, requires less water, and it likes being cut short. So that's a win, and we've updated Harry and David Field with that new surface. And finally, at Bear Creek Park, the skate park is being renovated, and also at Roosevelt School Park, which is, we partner with the school district, we're upgrading the old tennis courts into, you guessed it, 4 pickleball courts. So if you have friends who say there aren't enough pickleball courts in Medford, well, that's about ready to change, for better or for worse.
I think a lot about pickleball, more from the aspect if I can invent a ball or a paddle that eliminates all the noise, I feel like I could make a lot of money. The other big thing that we hear a ton about around town, specifically lately, is our transportation and road system. And so we have our Public Works Director, Dan Worth, here to share a little bit about that.
You've already heard people talk about the city's livability program. I think Public Works is part of livability too, because you want to drive down the streets without having to dodge potholes and without having to wait a long time in traffic, and that's what we're all about. The public infrastructure, the streets, maintaining them, expanding in some cases, as well as some of the other public infrastructure, the wastewater, sewer collection, the treatment, and our stormwater system all falls under the Public Works Department. But what most people usually care about the most is the roads. I want to talk about those. I'll start off with a big project to, I mentioned expanding capacity, Foothill Road. We've been building it for 2 years now. Great partnership with the state, with the county. Federal government's contributed funds to make that project a reality. And we're coming close to the finish line. Started south, moving north. We're up at the segment between Cedar Links and Delta Waters now, and the roadway's in place. What we're doing now is a lot of the stuff that's adjacent to the roadway, the concrete work, the curbs, the driveway entrances, median strips, and they've got some work to do to finish out the landscaping. But that thing is getting close. It'll be done this summer, ahead of schedule. It looks great. And as soon as we're done with that project, we're going to come in and put in a signal at the intersection at Delta Waters and Foothill, which will help with traffic flow in that area. So that's been a big success. Not as impactful, but certainly important. We've got a pretty vigorous maintenance program, and we're coming into the time of year where you're going to start seeing some of the crews and some of our contractors out doing some work on the roads to revitalize and to protect the surfaces, and to make some other improvements. Sidewalks, we've got a sidewalk program that's going to fill in some gaps and put some of those ramps in place for accessibility. 2 major ways that we do maintenance on the roads. One is what we call a slurry seal. It's a very thin layer of asphalt. Gives you a surface that looks brand new, gives you a nice smooth ride. We can apply that on streets that aren't really falling apart. It is more of a preservative. It helps keep the streets in good condition. The other thing that we do is on some of the streets that are experiencing more wear and tear, is called an overlay. We actually remove the top couple of inches of asphalt and put new asphalt down and give you a street that's going to hold together for a number of years. We've got one of those overlay projects citywide this year, and it happens to be in the northern part of the city, at the McAndrews, Lone Pine, Brookdale, that area. A big segment of McAndrews is going to be overlaid. We've got several of those slurry seal projects that are happening in the northeast and the northwest, Ward 1 and Ward 3. We got a complete list on our website, but just to highlight a couple of the big ones, we're going to be doing about 1.25 miles of Cedar Links. Let me back up. Yeah, 1.25 miles of Cedar Links, about 2 miles of Springbrook Sunrise, and Roberts, the street that you probably drove in on tonight. Some big slurry seal projects in those areas, and then in Ward 3, about a mile of Jackson from McAndrews to Central. We're going to do the slurry seal, nice new surface that's going to serve you well for a number of years. The last thing that I want to talk about, I mentioned wastewater. The biggest project we're actually doing, the biggest project the city's ever undertaken, is a major expansion of our wastewater treatment facility. Most of you don't even know where that is. It's not in the city. It's up by the banks of the Rogue River on Kirtland Road, west of Table Rock. It takes all of the wastewater when you run your faucet, flush your toilets, take a shower. We collect it in our collection system. It all goes down to this treatment plant, plus all the water that is flushed and drained out of customers in the Rogue Valley sewer system, RVSS system. So we're serving about 160,000 population at that treatment center. It's a big facility. We've got some issues with the quality effluent that they're tightening up some of the requirements as far as excess nutrients. So to meet those requirements, we're in the process of building a significant project. It's going to double the size, the footprint of the facility, and add some new technology. We're in the design phase right now, although we've already started work on some of the initial parts of that, and that's going to be ongoing for a couple of years. And hopefully it will be invisible to you. You keep on running the faucets and flushing, and the water will disappear, and you won't have to think about it. But just wanted to give you an idea of the kinds of things that are going on behind the scenes to make all that work. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
And some final comments from staff. We have interim city manager John Bile.
Thank you, Mayor. A quick question for all of you. This is I'm the last one of the city staff that's going to be speaking, and then the mayor's going to ask the city councilors to give you some comments. What is the difference in roles between the staff who you've just heard from and the city councilors that you are about to hear from? And Mr. Shotun, you cannot answer this. Yeah, what's the difference between the two? Well, that's a good point, and that's a good point, and it's one that I'm sure they agree with you on. Okay, they are elected, but the biggest difference is who sets the policy, who sets the overall goals for the city, who establishes the overall direction for the city is our elected officials. These folks that you're about to hear from are who establishes those policies. Then it's the folks you just heard from. It's our job to actually implement those policies and those procedures and those goals and objectives and carry those things out. We have a good team. We work really well together. My job is to make sure that we continue to work well together and that we continue to look to what council's asking us to do, and then we do it. And we're trying our best to do so. And with that, I'll conclude.
Thank you, John. Oh, we have a response. Evidently, this is a debate.
I think the biggest difference between council and staff is that if something goes really well, we get to show up for a photo op and take credit, and if something goes really wrong, we just blame the staff.
That is fairly accurate. So here we are. What we want to do, we have all your questions. We're going to kind of kick it off with, I'll just kind of go through the mix and pick some and go from there. Really and the whole intent of that is for these volunteer officials to be able to interact with the community. That's really the big point. I mean, it's great that we get to share a lot of good information that's going on in the city, but it's really important, I think, for us as electeds to hear from you and vice versa. But I am going to kick it off with the first question to everyone on the council. Say, I guess, whatever you want, but I'm thinking, why did you run for office, and/or what is the biggest thing on your mind right now? And we'll start with the senior member up here.
It's been a while. I gotta harken back to the days of 2014. Real quick, so I was born in Medford. I went to Oak Grove Elementary, and then after 5th grade, I moved to rural Oklahoma, which imagine it's a bit of a culture shock between living in a sizable city and having a class of, my entire graduating class was 35 people. I grew up very poor, and so my method to get out of my situation was to join the military. So I spent 9.5 years active duty Navy. I did 3 deployments on submarines. And I came back to Medford in 2013. And immediately I was like, well, I'm here back in Medford after being gone for quite some time. And I want to learn what city government is. I want to learn what happens on a local level. You know, lots of people spend lots of time looking about what's happening on a federal level. You know, lots of attention paid to whomever the president is, or sometimes a lot of people know what the governor does. But when it comes to like the local things, not a lot of stuff, right? Unless it directly impacts someone, unless it's like a development right across from you or a policy that directly impacts you. There's generally not a lot of discussion and talk. And I went to a city council meeting like 11 days after I got out of the military, and I happened to get in the elevator with Dick Gordon, who at the time was a city councilor. And I went and sat in the audience, and people were asking me if I was there for like a high school assignment. So I was 28 at the time, and people are asking me if I'm there for a high school assignment. And I would just go and I would just watch. So all of 2014, I just went and watched the city council, and they were just dealing with some of the issues that you see today are still happening many years later. Some of them, they had dangerous dog issue that was a big issue, a big thing at the time. Marijuana ordinances were a big thing at the time. And what happened is we have the ward system, as you can see, and it just happened to be that the apartment that I was living in Ward 3, the council member wasn't running for re-election. And so for me, it's like, oh, well, here's the opportunity to go from in the audience kind of talking to some people up there about decisions being made and maybe being on the other side of the dais and being part of that decision making. And I'm a pretty introverted person naturally, so going and knocking on doors was not an easy thing for me. But to make an impact, you got to do things that are uncomfortable. And so I was lucky enough to win, and then, I've continued on a couple more times because I really enjoyed the work. People don't come to city councils and say, you know what, I just want to say that you're doing a great job and then leave. Generally, they're coming because there's something regarding their neighborhood or something they see and they have an issue with it. And I love to hear those things, right? I wish we could solve everyone's problem. Sometimes that doesn't happen, but there's sometimes we can. Sometimes there really is emails of things that we can help address. And those are the things that are really exciting. Sometimes it's something small, because I had a friend that had that didn't have a sign that said dead end, and so people would keep turning around in her driveway. So I was like, oh, literally just fill out this form, and like 2 days later they put a sign in. And so for overall, it's a very minor thing, but heck, for her it meant a lot. And so having an impact, whether it be large or small, is a reason to do this work, and to continue and just do the most good. Thank you.
I was also born and raised here in Medford. I graduated about 200 feet that way in what used to be a very beautiful gymnasium that will hopefully be replaced in the next year. So growing up here, I thought I was really lucky. I think we have great weather. I loved going to all our parks. I had great education here. I went off to college at the U of O. I went to law school on the East Coast. Did not want to live on the East Coast, and I wanted to come home to where there was trees, and I could go hiking, and I could have my family here, and I'm very happy to be here. When I was a teenager, as a student in North Medford, I joined the Mayor's Youth Advisory Commission, which was like my first introduction into government of any kind, really. And it was a lot of fun. And by my senior year, there was an opening on the Parks Commission for the youth representative. And I was lucky enough to serve on Parks, and Rich was there, Rich remembers, and really figure out how representative democracy works, understand how a public, a community makes big decisions, how we spend money. And my day job, I am a land use attorney. So I deal with housing developments, commercial developments, all kinds of things throughout the state. I deal with local governments, like this one, everywhere. And one of my big concerns when I'm going around and I'm going into a new community for some kind of project is, are these reasonable people? That's a big question, right? Can I have a dialogue with them? Can I have a conversation with them? They might not agree with the project that I've been selected to represent. That's okay. But can I sit down and talk with them and problem solve? We're very lucky here because we have problem solvers who are your elected representatives and problem solvers on staff. And we might not get every thing correct, but I can promise you that when a question comes before us, we are engaging in that critical thinking and problem solving and trying to do our best. And not every community has that. So I ran for office #1 to make sure we had reasonable people in the room so that we could take a look at the problems and think, is that really how we should be doing things? I know we've been doing that for the last 50 years, but does that make sense financially? Does it make sense for the people who come after us? And then more personally, because as I said, I grew up here, I ran because of housing. I graduated with a class of probably 500 students, and most of them don't live here because they can't afford to live here. I've had most of my friends who would love to come back to Medford have to move up north to Portland, where surprisingly enough, it's actually cheaper to live. Apartments are comparable, but wages are higher. And that's a major problem. That is probably one of the biggest problems this community faces, is how do we ensure that we have enough young people? How do we ensure we have enough housing stock that people can afford to live in? I'm very concerned that we're going to turn into a community of just mostly renters, and I don't think that's healthy for our community. So one of my big problems is thinking, how can we as the city find ways to encourage development of housing that people can buy at a reasonable price? It's a big problem. I haven't solved it yet, but I'm trying. So those are my two main issues that I ran on for City Council. When we ask questions, if you don't get your question asked, feel free to come up afterwards. I'll stay here as long as possible to make sure that we can engage in that critical dialogue and problem solve together. Thank you.
I feel like it's difficult to follow you guys. Very prepared. I too was born and raised here in Medford. Like Kevin Stein, I went to Oak Grove Elementary, McLaughlin, and South Medford High School. I've always considered this my home. I've never left. I've never really dreamed of leaving until the day that I moved to an island on a beach somewhere. But there's no other place I'd rather be. My background is in commercial banking, so I've been working with businesses for the last 15 to 20 years, hearing about their problems, understanding how they operate, working with developers who do construction, all types of businesses from startups to very successful employers in the Valley. And I think, I never wanted to go into politics. I never thought of going into politics. And I was approached by people that were encouraging me to run because of my business expertise and my expertise with the nonprofit community. I had been involved with multiple nonprofits, Habitat, Access, Builders Association, Special Olympics, a lot of different great organizations. And so I think my passion is community. I care about the community that I live in. I care about helping people. And I think one of the things that pains me the most in this day and age is we have a lot of people with a lot of opinions, but we don't have a lot of participants. And so while I've been on council, my goal is to get more people involved, whether that's having a discussion, joining a board or commission, because we want to hear your voice. That's why we're here today. I want to hear your voice, and that's how we make decisions. So that and economic development is my other passion. So just continuing to help the business community, the downtown business community. That's where I really want my focus to be. So I appreciate you all coming and participating. And if you have any feedback about how we can interact better going forward, I would love to hear it.
I don't know that I have anything that formal prepared. I wasn't born here, I'm sorry. I have lived most of my life here. So my dad is from Grants Pass, my mom's from Brooklyn. We've moved back and forth quite a few times. I eventually landed here, and I love Oregon. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna stay in Oregon. I've lived here long enough to watch the city grow. Like a lot of you, I remember there's some neighborhoods where there used to be cows or cherry trees, and there's some businesses where there used to be a park. And as the city was growing and changing, I thought two things. One, and this is not throwing any kind of shade at the people who are doing this before us. We're all doing the best we can in the moment. It had sometimes felt a little disjointed to me. As the city grew, we weren't necessarily planning ahead far enough for that growth. And I've lived here a long time. I want to see it grow well. And I was just chatting with a couple of people, and I said, I do have a little bit of a philosophy of be involved or be quiet. I'm not very good at being quiet, like anyone who knows me will tell you. So that's kind of what led me to run. I don't have any political aspirations. Like Jess, I had a couple people who said, hey, from what we've gotten to know about you, we feel you might be a good fit. Would you consider it? And I told them no. And then a couple years later, I said, okay, yes. So it's not some grand picture or some ambition I have. I just thought I live here, I work here, I play here. I want to be a part of helping plan ahead for that. And if I had to speak a little more broadly, I don't know that I have any individual pet projects. There's things I'm more or less excited about, but what I want to make sure we do really well is plan ahead well. This is a touchy subject for some people. City's a heck of a lot bigger than it was when my family left in the late 90s and then came back again in the late 90s, and I left in the mid-2000s and came back. We're bigger, we're different. Fact is, relative to most of the West Coast, we're still a relatively affordable place. We also have very moderate weather, and this is a place that people want to be because it's awesome. We can all agree with that, right? Medford's going to keep growing. We need to plan ahead for that, and that includes housing and economic development and employment and parks and recreation and good restaurants and all of that. And I think if we do it strategically, we can make it be more welcoming to the people who are coming and cause less heartburn for the people who are already here. And that's really broad, and I don't have all the answers to all that, but that's why I decided to be a part of it and to engage in just really good conversation and discussion. I love playing devil's advocate, which means I might 100% agree with you, but I will still try to prove you wrong so I can understand it better. And I expect the same back from other people. If you have an idea or a concept, anyone on staff will tell you my favorite question is, tell me if this is a stupid idea. Because I have some ideas. Someone had to explain to me gently why we can't tunnel I-5. So I want to hear that, and I want to understand all sides of it to make sure we're making the most comprehensive decision we can. Not everybody's always going to be happy about everything because we live in the real world, but if we can have reasonable conversations and understand each other better, we can all understand how we're getting where we're going instead of someone feeling left behind or feeling like we're being driven blind. So.
You know what? I learned some things right there, and I mean, I work with these people and 4 others on the regular, and you always kind of forget a little bit about. Honestly, this is just a commitment of caring for the community. This is not. I'll be honest. I've seen the movies as well. There is no way to get rich doing what we're doing here. This is not a financial plan. It is commitment. It is caring about your community. So I'd say another round of applause for these great counselors here. And so we'll kick off some questions here. well, like I said, we'll do the best we can to get to all of them. I had gone through these not to put some at the bottom, but more in the fact that there are quite a few that are very specific, I think, more for staff and day-to-day operations. You heard that talk about. These are policy type. Where do we want to go as a city? That's how we get there. So some of these we're going to go ahead and turn over to staff when we get to those. But the first question we got is, it might be time to consider holding these town halls in venues which attract more people. Wineries, bars, ball games, etc. Any other ideas? Ms. Harris, would you care to take this?
I love the one that we had at Roxy Inn. I thought that was great. You know, it's funny. Some people want a more casual venue, and some people want a more formal venue. So when we went to Roxy Inn, there were people that complained that they didn't get the more formal presentation. So it's nice when we can mix it up and help everybody. But one discussion that we did have recently was that we would like being more involved in specific community events, and that means, you know, whether that looks like having a table at an event where people can come up and talk to council and maybe appropriate staff. We really want to do more things like that, but if any of you have any specific ideas about places that we should be to interact with people, we would love to hear them.
And certainly Jessica brings up a good point of us as electeds coming out to meet you versus you coming to meet us. And I think that we've got some good opportunities for that. Our next question is somewhat of a statement. Please partner as much as possible with state and federal agencies in 2 areas. Did we get to your question? There we go. Or statement, bus routes in North Medford and mental health services for North Medford.
So good news, we do our best, absolute best, to partner with the state and federal government. Every time one of our senators is in town, at least one of us is meeting with that person. Every time the congressman is in town, we meet with that person. Annually, the city council sends a delegation to Washington, D.C. to pressure federal agencies to give us more money so that we can fund important things, and we're in regular contact with the representatives in Salem. So, to be clear, not every city can do that. We're very lucky to have enough funding to prioritize that, and we get a lot of money back from the state and the feds because we're so on it with going out for those kind of grants. With bus routes. So, number one important, we don't control the RVTD buses. RVTD is a separate organization where the voters elect a special board to run the bus system. There is a ballot initiative that's on the ballot this May concerning whether to renew a levy for RVTD the voters have passed previously. So because of the federal government, there have been bus cuts. I would say buses are incredibly important. Not everyone in here rides the bus. Not everyone in here has ever ridden an RVTD bus. But for some members of our community, that is the only way people can get to their doctor. It's the only way they can get to work. It's the only way they can get to school. So it's really important that as much as we're able to as a community, we provide that kind of lifeline. On the mental health care aspect, we need to do more. We know that, and we're trying our best. The livability team from the police department has done outstanding work, right? Outstanding work. They don't have all the resources available, but we're trying our best to find more money at all times. The livability team is probably the best kind of police group we have in the state of Oregon, right? Taking hundreds of encampments and reducing it to like a dozen. That's incredible. If you go up north to cities, Eugene, Salem, Portland, you'll see communities that haven't been able to engage in that kind of problem solving as much as we have. So I will promise that's at the top of our mind all the time, trying to get the resources available. And at the 10,000 foot level, we're constantly trying to figure out, this is a big issue. How are we going to solve it not just for this year and next year, but for decades and decades to come?
I want to add to that, his comment about the livability team and reducing the encampments. It's important to note, it doesn't mean that we took people and, I'm going to be a little tongue-in-cheek, but other communities have done this, and we took them out to Klamath Falls on a bus and then said, good luck over here, and then came back with an empty bus. They've been connecting them with services, and they've been trying to get them help, and I'm going to add a little bit of pitch here. we have 2 or 3 times now had ballot measures to fund a new jail. And they have 2 or 3 times been voted down. And I will admit, before I understood the circumstances better, part of me thought, well, I don't want to just build a bigger cage to throw people into when they annoy us. And that can be a simplistic way to look at it. Part of what can happen there is people can sober up, people can get connected with mental health and counseling services, people can be kept in there long enough to actually meet with counselors and judges and sentencing. These are tied. If you want to see improvements in mental health and you want to see improvement in services, we need to create the opportunities for that to happen. And a big part of that, this is a county issue, not a city issue, because we don't run the jail. I'm not going to speak for the council, but personally, a new jail would be a huge step towards accomplishing that. And it's not to hide the problem off in a concrete bunker. It's to connect them with people who can actually help them. So don't think of it as just locking someone up and ignoring them. It has a very functional and humanist purpose.
And I will say on that note, the city does continually work with the county on that issue. Another big issue that we've been trying to get off the ground and help with, again, it's a county thing, is a mental health stabilization facility as well. So these all kind of tie together. Okay, I have a specific question here. Kennedy Park is the closest park to this location, okay? But residents can't access it without going all the way up to Springbrook. Can the city make it more accessible from North Keene Way or Temple Drive? I don't know if we can do that math visualize that in our head. I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of a swap at that, unless Garrett wants to pull up a map. But in general, the city really does not expand the roadway network very often. Foothill Road is an example of where that occurred. But in general, most of the streets you see built are actually associated with development projects. So it's next to Kennedy Elementary. So I don't know if, number one, that actually might even be on a TSP map for the bike ped. That gives us a second here. Does anybody want to talk about the TSP and that process and how that would actually end up as perhaps a city-funded plan? Kevin is going to talk about the transportation system plan.
You got the wrong person. Transportation, it's all the rage, right? So we don't go out and build roads just willy-nilly. Most of the time, we're not building roads. We have development come in, they build a neighborhood, they build a shopping center, and they're responsible for building the roads so that you don't have to because they need to get people to their product, and they're increasing traffic, so it's their responsibility, number one. So the city of Medford doesn't just grow haphazardly. We have a lot of comprehensive plans on how things should grow. One of those is the transportation system plan. And we're very lucky because we're updating it, starting to update it this year, which means if you have problems, if you have ideas about how we should be doing transportation in the city of Medford, you should email us so that we can consider it and put it in the big plan. It's a big plan. It includes everything. It talks about intersections, roadways, pedestrian infrastructure, bicycle infrastructure, a little controversial. So it talks about all these different things because we want to be able to move through town safely and, in my opinion, with good flow, because I hate having to stop at every red light. It drives me crazy, and I just want to keep going through town in a nice, convenient way. So when it comes to how we get to our parks or to other places, yeah, that's an important thing to know. People aren't able to get to Kennedy Park. I didn't know that. It's not the park I go to all that often. So when you have ideas like that, please let us know so we can add it into the transportation system plan.
All right, except for the Hawthorne Stadium, where is the city at about making new possibilities about homeless families and children? I'm just going to take this as maybe a broader context of what the city's doing to work on homelessness. We are very active, engaged with our partners. In other words, we are in close contact with those that provide service. However, we don't really provide service. We stick to more the core municipal functions. We do have some funds that we either pass through from the federal government or We do have some of our own grant monies that we do send out. It's not a giant amount, but what that really does is when those nonprofits go and apply for other grants, they show that they have city support with them. So it's not so much that our dollars really add. It sort of is a leverage tool for them. That being said, Jessica had plenty of nonprofit experience and can kind of speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on the bulk of it. We have grant funding that we have a process to distribute through the city. And, you know, also when it comes to homelessness specifically, there was a lot of funding that came through with the governor's emergency plan several years ago, and that enabled us to really support the development of the campground and help Rogue Retreat predominantly do their mission. But there are a lot of good nonprofits out there doing that work. The Salvation Army we've helped them with grant funding to do transitional housing. And, you know, most of these nonprofits have a lot of different opportunities, you know, where people can actually step up through the system and get to a better place over time. So I think, you know, us partnering with people like Rogue Retreat has been a big success for our city. And it's really helpful to our livability team when they're going out and working with individuals and they actually have resources and places to take them to. And that coupled with just, you know, we do have other funding through the construction excise tax that we distribute to our housing opportunity through our housing opportunity fund to assist with affordable housing development as well, to just once again add another layer to that process of assistance.
Okay, so these are going to be staff questions. If you guys are ready, Rich, are there any parks planned for Northeast Medford, specifically near Springbrook and Owen?
Short answer, not at this time. The longer answer is that our department works with the developers of the new neighborhoods that are built. And they have open space requirements. So they can build houses, but they have to keep a certain amount of open space. It's a percentage. They have options to do that. They can work with the city and have a public park, and some have done that. They could have a homeowners association park maintained by the homeowners, and they could do that. And wetlands count toward the open space. So as we have opportunities in MD2, MD3, and we've had discussions, some of them have not progressed. It's not that we haven't tried, but right now there's nothing cooking in that part of the city. And if we had millions of dollars to buy the land, we would, but that's not the case.
All right, two-parter. Dan, get ready. Can we get a speed bump on Honolulu Lane between Arrowhead and Springbrook?
We have a process for that. And I'd be happy to talk with anybody who's interested in that particular location, but we have a process where you can submit a request, and we go through we've got a committee that is volunteers, and they look at these kinds of requests, and they make recommendations, and we can apply all the right rules to look at the particular situation. But there is a process that we can use to consider requests like that.
And come to find out, by the way, speed bump is a naughty term inside the right-of-way. It's got to be like a speed hump or a tabletop, I believe, is another term. Otherwise, everyone just rejects it. Question. I hope there will be an update on the convention center / ballpark. Who's interested in that?
Yeah, thank you. So obviously, I helped run the campaign with Nick Card, who's another city councilor. And I told everyone that this is all very conceptual, right? Because it is not, we don't control, the city is not building a convention center. It is working with a private developer at the location at the old end of the commons for them to purchase it, and then the city assists with assistance, financial assistance to help make that happen, right? Getting a convention center for Medford puts us in the ball game in terms of bringing more people to Medford, because right now you just can't have any kind of sizable convention. People go to Salem, Bend, Portland. I think there's one on the coast somewhere, but there's nothing around here. The Ashland Springs Hotel, I think, does like 250 or so. So we kind of miss out in terms of that economic tourism. And so the possibility of a private developer coming and building one is very exciting for the city. So that's one aspect. As it is, that private developer or no one else has been able to acquire that property in order to then potentially build a convention center. We're always hopeful, but these are things outside of our control. I'm going to assume that the ballpark is going to be part of this too, right? So we'll go ahead and do the ballpark because I'm sure people are going to care about that. So kind of similar conditions in terms of it is kind of just looking into what can be done here. Eugene Emeralds, they could not provide a proper stadium for their professional baseball team, so that team needs to move somewhere else. They came to Medford and see if we were interested. We had an interest, and we were looking at different locations. As it stands now, what the council did is we used some of our urban renewal money. So this is not funding that could go to like police and fire or whatever else. It has to be within the boundaries of urban renewal. And so how that'll look is they'll evaluate two different locations. One will be the north end of Hawthorne Park, which is the area closest to the Medford Center. And the other area would be where Harry and David Field is. So we're looking for information, basically. And so at this time, we have no idea. We have no strong idea of how much it would cost or the ability to put it in these locations, and that's the point of the study. Once the study comes back and we have more information, then the council will make a decision on whether we go forward, whether we don't go forward, but really we're still in the information gathering stage with that.
I tell you what, on this one, there's about 4. Who made a question for the stadium? Who else made a question about the stadium? Okay, we got a few.
Sure. Where funding, is that our tax money that's going to that, or is that some outside funding? Why are we funding this study for a private developer? That's my question.
All right, if we break this one down into parts, but the simple part is this: do you believe that a stadium is a public asset? And if the answer is no, of course we're going to say don't use any money for that. Could be depending on that. So in fairness, that I think is what we're stepping through right now.
It's a lot of money for a study.
Okay. So here, okay. So what I appreciate all your questions. We talked. I got a pretty good beat, I think, on where you're at on this. So the money that got approved is for kind of concept design to really break it down and say how much is this going to cost. It also includes not just the downtown location, but what would it cost if you redid Harry and David as well. So what we're doing is stepping through and making sure that we've given it fair consideration. Can we find value in this other than 66 home games a year for baseball, right? That's a lot of money for 66 games. But when you start looking around, there's up to maybe 200 days of use out of this, and maybe there's public good that can come out of that. The question is, are we like spending the money to evaluate that and get all the way through it? The answer is council said yes. I will tell you, there is plenty of hesitation as far as all that goes on a stadium. Number one for everybody, there's a pretty simple question saying, when's the city just going to say no to that? And really the answer is it even a reasonable cost for us to take on, and are we going to get a public good that matches for that? And so there's plenty of people right now can tell you the answer, right? They'll say no. In fairness, I can go into another room and they'll say absolutely. And so what we're doing is working through it. I feel like we're being smart about it, but to say that this is a rubber stamp that's just going to go is completely. I don't want to say that if that's gotten out there, but we cannot just say yes to say yes. It's got to make sense. We've got to be able to afford it. We can't sacrifice like legitimate public not monies. We cannot sacrifice our core public service to build a stadium. And I think I'm kind of speaking for the council on that. But to say there are things about that we can see the public benefit, but we just got to prove it. And we got to make sure we can afford it. But that's me speaking in generalities.
Just, I think to articulate a little bit of your question about where the money's coming from is it's a little confusing. MURA is a separate entity. It's the Medford Urban Renewal Agency. It collects tax increment financing. So properties that are in the MURA district have a baseline tax, and we all know taxes go up year over year. What MURA does is it sets a baseline, and from there, the taxes that happened before continue to go to the municipalities that collected them. As taxes increase, that difference goes towards MURA. The purpose of MURA is to encourage economic development and to prevent blight. So we don't want properties in the MURA district to be losing value and be getting blighted. So MURA, which is us as a separate board, but it is a separate entity, approved giving the city up to $500,000 for this study. As a standalone entity, and this is pretty well established, ballparks don't make money. This is not, if I build it for $1 million, I'm going to make $5 million. What it does is it encourages redevelopment, and it can revitalize areas that have struggled. So do not leave here thinking Curlinger just said he loves baseball and will do whatever it takes to get a park. That is not what I'm saying. I do love baseball, but I'm willing to say no to a park. I'm willing to say I like it, but it's not for the best of the city. But the study is to determine what would it actually cost to build, where could that funding come from, and is there a reasonable expectation that if this facility is built, it's going to draw more investment, more revitalization, and more economic development within that district. So it is not, hey, we think the M's are so cool, we're just going to pay for them to come play some games here. It's got to have benefit to the city. And this study is going to help us determine what do those numbers look like, and is there a way that this makes sense and benefits us. Because I love the Rogues too. And I'll go up to Eugene to watch a game, and I'll go to Seattle to watch a game. But I'm not going to go spend, it's my money too. I mean, I pay taxes in the city too. I'm not just going to go say, I love baseball so much, we're doing this no matter what. So that's where the funding is coming from and why it exists. It's not because we like the M's, we're just going to write them a check. It's so we can see if this could benefit the rest of that district and a larger group of bodies. I don't know if we're going to do open question time, but I'm going to give it to Jessica.
So I'm probably one of the most cynical voices on the council about this topic. And I just want to make it really clear that we haven't spent that $500,000 yet. That's allocated. We still don't have RFPs back on who's going to complete this work, and we have not made the decision to hire that person and pay that money yet. So that hasn't happened. We're going to evaluate what comes back from those bids. And then I think like I said, economic development is a focus of mine, but I also am very cognizant on being able to pay for something. And so far, we have not determined if this is something that we can pay for yet. So I have not made a decision on that either way because I need to see the numbers. Yeah.
So real quick, who here has been or seen or knows of Lithium Driveway Fields when you go towards Ashland, right? That was not universally popular. Not everyone was like, great, let's make this happen. Who here has been to the Rogue X or knows about it or took their kid there or whatever it might be? That was a ballot measure. It got 52% of the vote. Like, that was not a universal, everyone loves this is going to be great. But sometimes the concepts become a reality, and when you have the reality, it kind of works out. So that's kind of my vision here. It's very easy and there's a lot of really good justifiable reasons why people just do not like certain ideas. And I'm not here to change anyone's mind. I'm just here to tell you how I get to where I am. And I agree with what Councilor Curlinger said 100%, right? I think we are obtaining information and then figuring out next steps. There's a chance that we move forward and we have another amenity. And there's a chance that it just doesn't make sense and we don't. But I think from our perspective, I think whether it be this or other ideas, it makes sense to look into it, right? It makes sense. We don't have a bunch of opportunities. I wish we had a bunch of developers that just wanted to spend hundreds of millions of dollars, and we just, we had a big selection. The fact of the matter is we have these opportunities that come before us. It makes perfect sense for us to take the time, sometimes take the funding and energy, and see if it makes sense for Medford. Some ideas are going to go through, and you see them now. I'm sure there's other ideas that just didn't work out. And so where this lies, we'll find out over time. Thank you.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm really glad that we brought it up. I'm glad that we're having that, because the idea is, as you can hear, decisions have not been made, but certainly consideration is going to be given. Is kind of the best way to think of it.
I'll be really brief on this one, but this as a philosophical approach to these kinds of things. I've been a part of other organizations where I've been involved on PACs or government affairs issues, and I have interviewed candidates. And I've sat in rooms where, based on the goal of the association, we're talking to somebody, and I say, these goals most closely align with the purpose we're serving here. And I have voted to give money or support to candidates or measures. And then I have personally gone and voted the opposite. Because what we were discussing within this lane, that's what made the most sense, even though I personally may feel different. And I think most of the rest of the council can approach things the same way. We can look at something and say, I may have a personal opinion on this. And then I may go and vote differently as a representative of the city. So am I willing, is Mike willing to pay money for a baseball stadium? Yeah, I love baseball. That doesn't inherently mean it is in the best interest of the city to pay money for a baseball stadium. So please understand that there are different lanes that happen, but to just say no without having the information is just as stupid as saying yes without having the information.
Okay, so we've got a no on 500,000. Ma'am, did you want to ask a question on that?
Because when Rogex went through, it got voted down in Medford. And then they sold it to us as the people of Medford would not have to pay for it, but yet it shows up on our bill every month that we pay as part of Park and Rec. My fear is, if the ballpark does come in, are we all going to be paying for that on our monthly bill? That's $80 a month.
That's a. Well, so here's what I'll say on that is the main funding for the construction of Rogex, and if you've noticed, I'm kind of drifting over here by the Parks and Recreation Director, just in case I need some fact check here, was from transient lodging tax. And that is something that we do not pay for. Those are taxes on hotel rooms, taxes on car rental fees when people come to visit. A big driver for those facilities is out-of-town visitors, because these facilities are there. They have essentially drive these tournaments to drive people here. I tell you what, man, I am so glad that I kind of skipped that whole travel ball stuff. I'm just going to go on a quick aside. I can't imagine how much people are paying nowadays to take their kids all over the place. It's pretty amazing. However, I'm glad to take their money when they show up. That being said, Brian, raise your hand. This former, I'm just going to come. You want to answer this question, Brian? No. When it comes down to that, there was a great philosophy that a former parks director and former city manager had, which is build something that Medford can use. That's what you want to do. And that's still a core question I think has to be answered when it comes to the ballpark and to that. Is this facility going to be an asset to Medford? And that's a concern that's brought up that is shared, is that it is just, again, 66 home games a year, and that those price tags and that get to be really challenging, and it's difficult. They're close. Rich, do you want to talk about cost recovery when it comes to parks? I think it's a very good question.
Appreciate your question. So the funding mechanisms for the ROGEX, the primary funding mechanisms, the hotel motel tax, which had to go to voters, which was approved. That was one of the funding streams. The other is car rental, the car rental tax was expanded. And we rebonded on the Lithium Driveway, U.S. Cellular Community Park funds, and the park utility fee, which is what you referenced that you pay on a monthly basis. Park utility fee is about $7 per month. So that's the funding mechanism that built the ROGEX. The the subsidy to run the ROGEX right now is about $400,000 a year. So that is what the city subsidizes to run the building. What the city builds these facilities for, to serve local need, as the mayor said, but also to put heads in beds and to bring economic activity and stimulus to the community. The economic stimulus of the ROGEX last year was about $9 million. So is $400,000 of a subsidy to run the building worth a $9 million return in terms of economic stimulus? That historically has been what the city council has believed is a good investment, both for the sports park and for the ROGEX.
Okay. There was a second part to the question. I think we've covered all that I saw here. But the second part to the question is... Nope. Really, the second part of the question was, when we have big issues like this, how does the city get the information out to the citizens? And this is KJ, who you all met when you walked in, who thought she had nothing to do tonight.
Nothing to do. Good evening. Yes, I am KJ. I'm the communications director for the city of Medford. We talk a lot about a lot of things constantly. In your packet there that you got tonight, there's 3 different ways you can get involved. We send emails and text messages straight to your phone. We do direct mailers through the utility bill insert, but also the Parks and Rec guide. Also the postcard that you received about tonight's event is in direct mail. We do in-person events. Our elected officials are very engaged. Our staff is very engaged. So we are constantly presenting to different groups, organizations, people who invite us, people who may not have invited us. We're always trying to spread our messages through different venues. And social media. Lots of Facebook, Instagram, X. And text alerts? Yes. So, yep, email and text. Yeah, so if you grab the handout, there's a QR code. You can go right there, and you can subscribe. We do traffic alerts. We do event notifications. We do 2 monthly emails, just giving you a lay of the land of what happened this month at the city, different council actions, other projects that are coming to life, and events from Parks Department, what our police and fire departments have been up to, projects that Public Works is doing, and various other things. Council agendas, yes, and council actions are also included in there. Yes, thank you. We have a newsroom on our website, so medfordoregon.gov. On the homepage is our newsroom, but you can go to /newsroom, and there's all of our articles. We post lots of different information throughout the week, and we have some art projects happening. People can submit their art. The council just closed their art contest, giving high schoolers funding. Is that what you meant, Jessica, the website? Yes.
Miss Jessica, can you start over?
I guess I'm not loud enough. So our website's great. You can, like I said, figure out who your elected officials are, how to contact them, different city departments, how to contact them, what boards and commissions are out there, and what vacancies are on them that you could apply for. KJ's newsroom that she discussed. I just think we have a really great website, so you should at least check it out and see what information's available there.
I'll just add real quick. The media we have around town generally does a pretty good job of being somewhere between mostly to totally accurate in what they're reporting. I can tell you very, very confidently, whatever comments you are reading underneath those posts falls somewhere between sort of to not accurate at all. So if that's where you're reading something, if you're reading that the city of Medford just agreed to spend $500 million on a baseball stadium, which is what someone asked me a few months ago, the answer was no. We were talking about a $500 million development, which the city wanted to be 10% in on for a baseball stadium and a convention center and a shopping center and apartments and a hotel. Those are two really different things. So if you see something that seems kind of outlandish or nefarious, odds are it's because someone is either just stirring the pot or mistaken.
The only thing, kind of caveat to that, if you ever read anything that's really nice and complimentary about me, it's 100% true. 100% true. I will say, let me point out one thing. So if you go on the website and it says mayor and council and you feel like you're just sending an email off into the ether, every single email gets read by every single elected official. So if you feel like, well, shoot, I wish I could have gone down into the meeting and said my piece, you send that email, everybody reads it. It's out there. So if you have concerns about something, come send it in. Slightly different. Another staff question on this one. This is for Chief. How many gangs are in Medford, and how are the police coming together with other initiatives to keep track of what gangs are going on?
Well, we do have some local gangs. Is it a huge problem? I would say no, but it definitely is an issue. Our Medford area drug and gang enforcement team is basically the intel piece for us on our local gangs. But typically what happens, we have a gang case, our detectives jump on it and do a great job of getting those cleared up. We recognize the severity on those. They're like a bad sore. If you don't take care of them and get on them and hold people accountable, then they just continue to fester and get worse. And so we take those very serious. As far as graffiti and tagging that you might see, that is one of my biggest pet peeves, and it drives me crazy. And so through code enforcement, they work countless hours on contacting private business owners. It is their responsibility if you are a private business owner or property owner, if your property does get tagged, it is your responsibility to abate that. However, we will assist you in doing that. Public property, the Parks Department does an amazing job of jumping on it and getting it cleaned up as much as or as quickly as possible, along with assistance from our livability team. So yes, it is a problem that we're constantly monitoring. I think we do a very good job of keeping our finger on the pulse and trying to keep it as contained as we can. But we don't want it to get any worse, that's for sure.
I'm charging you $1.50 for every other question.
The question is, what happens when people report graffiti to the city? Which, Kennedy, I see. Yes, we're aware of the canopy, and the canopy has been removed, cleaned, the graffiti removed, replaced, re-graffitied, and so it's an ongoing struggle. So if it's reported to us, we get to it as soon as possible. We try to get to it within 48 hours. Sometimes we have 2,600 acres. Our staff's not going to notice everything, but if it's reported to us, we do everything. But I can tell you that canopy was expensive, and we've had to do it repeatedly to the point where we're sort of wondering whether we should have a canopy there, but we don't want to be deductive in what we have in parks.
And that is something that we face a little bit down in downtown. The chess player statue is continually vandalized and chess pieces stolen, and it's frustrating. We have a question that is a little bit, I'm gonna broaden it from the specifics here, but essentially, what is the city policy? I'm gonna say the city policy when social services are provided in a neighborhood, whether I'm assuming like a residential treatment or that sort of, or maybe even homeless services. What I will say is that we have another staff member who is not prepared to speak. We do have very, very specific code language on that. This is what we run into all the time, which is we see these issues. We need to provide service, but not there. And that's kind of a challenge that we work on. We do have code language that does allow certain things in certain areas, even in residential neighborhoods, but there are usually a lot of guidelines and caveats that go with that. Eric, are you comfortable speaking a little bit on that?
All right, so there's two separate parts of this question. The first is talking about services provided in on private property, in a residence or in a commercial building, and that is dealt with. There's a host of different state and federal laws dealing with what the city can control, what the city can't control in terms of if someone wants to have a recovery home within a residential neighborhood. And so that's not something where we can just say, oh, we don't want any of those in the city of Medford. There are some restrictions and those laws exist for the reason that everybody wants those services to exist. Nobody wants to be directly adjacent to them, but if nobody's directly adjacent to them, they don't exist. So the state and federal government does have some restrictions on what we can do in terms of if someone wants to have set up a recovery house in a residential neighborhood. And we follow those applicable state and federal laws as to that. They have a land use process they need to go through, but we can't just say, no, we don't want it, because there is a public need for those services. The second part of this question is about, well, what about distribution in parks? What happens if someone wants to give out food or wants to give out clean needles in a city park? And with that case law, right or wrong, and my job is not always to say what I want the law to be. My job is to say what the law is, whether or not I agree with it. And there's a case, Fort Lauderdale, Food Not Bombs v. City of Fort Lauderdale, dealing with distribution of food and other services in city parks. And whether people agree with it or not, what the appellate courts have said is that that is a First Amendment protected activity, just like holding a prayer circle in a city park is. The city is not allowed to prevent a nonprofit from giving out food in a city park. So when you see a nonprofit giving out services in a park, whether you agree with the case law or not, the laws that we follow state that we need to treat that just like someone having a prayer group in a city park, and there's First Amendment protections for that activity.
I'll just tag on to that a little bit more, particularly, I would say around 2020, even pre-COVID, but especially during COVID, you know, the issues that came up with homelessness in Medford were pretty challenging. We looked at a lot of different options. We gave a lot more options for people to do maybe the unconventional. So if you go to, I think it's called the Crossings now, back then it was called Urban Campground, that was not a possibility under our previous code. So we did make changes to code so that we can get these things done. But oftentimes what it means is they have to have an operations plan, a safety plan, they have to notify the neighbors. In some cases, that means that they have to get, and we're going to get into the weeds here, additional use permit. In other words, we set conditions on using that use in that area. So if you are adjacent to something and you're having trouble, what you can do, believe it or not, is you can go ahead and email me. In all probability, I will not email you back, but one of the city staff, specifically the police department, would get back to you, or might even be planning department, and we would look into that. Like I said, they run that. Is that legitimately a department saying no call too small? No call too small. So you will get a response. I just like saying that, by the way, no call too small. Kind of fitting into that, at what point does the city council get involved with residential planning projects? Well, good thing we have a land use attorney here that's going to explain the difference between what we can and cannot do when it comes to that. I'm going to give the broad strokes. The broad strokes is we can set the rules and the boundaries, but then once a project applies under those rules and guidelines that we put out, that council approves as part of our land development code, people are then entitled to be able to count on those rules and policies to be utilized.
So we have a housing crisis. You might not have heard about this. There are not enough homes in the state of Oregon. So what the mayor said is accurate. You know, we set policy rules, and people come in and say, "I'd like to build this on my property." When it comes to housing, we apply the rules just plainly. We don't get to say, "I'd like a house there," or "I don't want a house there." We don't get to say, "I like that design," "I don't like that design." We don't have that kind of discretion. Most of the housing development that comes to the city that's applied for, it goes to the planning department, and they can cross-apply the code as applicable. Sometimes things are a little more complicated, and it has to go before the planning commission. Those are also volunteers. They're also unpaid. And what they do is they meet basically every other week, and they do the same thing. They look at the code, and they apply it to the proposed development. This is a balance in our community between property rights to make sure that when you invest your hard-earned money into a property, you can do something valuable with it. You could live there. You could build something to make more money off of it, whatever you'd like. It balances with the community's concerns about, is that an appropriate area for that kind of use? Is it appropriate to build a giant industrial facility there? I don't know. We should look to the zoning code. We should look to the zoning map. So those are the kind of big policy decisions that council really gets involved in, is should that kind of use, those general type of uses, be over there or should be over there? Last night we had a fun study session about car washes a little bit, which is a big conversation in the community on social media. And we're deciding, should car washes be allowed in every zone? Should we have some more rules about where exactly car washes should be? Not exactly the same as housing, but it's kind of similar. You can imagine problems that can arise with housing being too close to a car wash or housing being too close to industrial developments. So if there's a residential development going in near your house, we are limited on what exactly we can do when it comes to that. I can definitely talk about how the state plays into that. There are so many rules in the state of Oregon about land use and development. I had to download the code, the Oregon Administrative Rules that were promulgated by the Department of Land Conservation and Development a few weeks ago, a thrilling read at over 1,000 pages of rules. And so there are so many rules that we're bound by, right? We have some discretion on where we can put things on a map, but really when it comes down to it, housing is probably always going to be approved in the city of Medford. There's, certain circumstances where it might not be, but as a rule of thumb, it's true.
And I've got a slight soapbox on this, which is our land use system, I believe is 1971 or 72. 71, 72. One of the guiding principles of that was, hey, here's how we want to do development in the state of Oregon, but local leaders, you know your community the best, and we'll give you the flexibility to work within the overall bounds, but let's make everything like Medford appropriate, Klamath appropriate, Salem appropriate. And that is really starting to slip. That is really going away quite a bit. And while we do the best we can, if for example, in general, fourplexes are allowed almost anywhere in any zone. And that is not a decision. When I was talking about the policy, that wasn't a policy that we had any choice on, but we are able to say certain things like, but if you're going to do that, it has to be on like this much off-street parking, or it has to meet these types of architectural standards. There's things that we can put on there, but I'll be honest, it is becoming more and more land use in this state, in this area, more and more dictated by what we get out of Salem than necessarily what we would push for as electeds. I think we have time for one more. But we'll make it clear that we'll stick around and answer whatever questions you want. Actually, you can say
So I'm committing everyone now.
Jessica personally.
So
Stay as long as you want.
if we didn't get to your question, please feel free at least to approach myself. And I'll try to answer it.
All right, let's take a hot question here, for real. Why is putting Main Street back to a normal throughway so expensive? One of the big reasons why it is so expensive is
We will, when we get to whatever configuration we're going to end up with, we will have to remove the striping that's there now and remove the chest pieces, the bollards that are there. And we'll do this with a contract. And the contract will do the removal of the existing stuff. They've got to basically grind it all out because we don't want to have any hint of the old lines in place when we redo the stripes, because that will confuse people. So it's a process that they've got to go through to remove the old stuff, and then they've got to restripe with paint, and then we use a fairly expensive process to put thermoplastic markings down for the turns and various other elements of what we have to put back on the street. And we use this expensive thermoplastic because it lasts. It's a good product. But we're going to bid it out, and we have recently bid out similar work for, I mentioned to you earlier, the slurry seal projects that we do. Every time we do a slurry seal, we have to put stripes back down. And we recently bid that out for some of the projects we're doing this summer. And our estimate for what we got to do on Main Street is consistent with what we get on those bids from the contractors. That's the market price. That's what it costs to do that kind of work. Wish I had a better answer, but it's expensive work.
And there is also a portion of that which is we did the original we did the revised configuration with some grant money, and because we're not staying with that, the grant money has to go back. And so what that's a sting, right? And we're pushing back on the state, trying to say, look, we tried something. The community just, not everybody, but by and large, did not accept it. And how can we work with that? The state's in a little bit of a pickle right now, and the program that the money came from is actually going away, and that money is being diverted to other more operational type of activities. So any opportunity, I think, for the state to kind of reclaim money back out of that program is a good one for them. That's why it's been such a struggle to say, well, can we just use this on a different project that meets this criteria, and we're not getting that back. Look, that's the grant that we signed up for, and we said, hey, if we don't keep it, we'll give it back. So I'm not saying that's their fault, but it would have been nice if we could have found a different way to do that and to work with the state to maybe solve a problem that would be a little bit more acceptable by the people. But that's one of the reasons that drives that. And I think that's good for me to say on that. We are at time. As you heard from Jessica, Jessica and Garrett are going to stay here till midnight and chat however long you want. But I just want to say thank you guys so much for coming out. You can have your question in just a minute. Thank you much for coming out. Also, the dialogue, the fact that we're sitting here going, look, I don't agree with what you guys are thinking here. And by the way, that message gets carried not just with these four people, with the entire council, giving us plenty to think about, and we appreciate all that you had to say. So, night.